Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to kick off a new theme as we do on Mondays, this one being revisiting artists. Artists that we've only listened to once of prior, and I definitely need to listen to more. Today we're going to be checking out some John Coltrane, which does technically meet the requirements of I didn't even think about this prior. It does technically meet the requirements of the theme. Let me put it this way. I've only reacted to Coltrane's work once prior, but I am quite familiar with his work. It just dawned on me. That's kind of funny. Anyways, we're gonna dive into my favorite things here. See what Coltrane's bringing to the table today. Okay, so yeah, my favorite things. Very recognizable melody. Ooh, that was a fun note to land on. Beautiful control. Interesting bass line for this too. Oh, this is fun. The piano is really stretching out that main lick and exploring it in like two-note groupings. Different key on that one. That was, oh, jeez, okay. Okay, taking a very minimalistic lens to it. playing around with timing here too. We were omitting beat 1 out of the 6/8, now we're omitting beat 4. But interestingly, the bass fills in for the piano. That's clever. Yeah, just kind of fluttering around these core notes. Dude, the harmonic movements the piano throws into that classic line. Playing around with rhythm here. It's interesting to listen to the two different ways of crafting variation on this core lick. Interesting. I'm finding less connections in this solo than the piano solo. Maybe I'm just missing it. It's feeling spicy today though. Yeah, and the harmonic reset from the rhythm section as we pull back into the A section. Something very hypnotic about that rhythm on the piano, accenting beats 1, the end of 2, and the end of 4. Nice ghost note work on the drums. Okay, that was wild. Very tense for some reason. It feels more relaxed here. I think a lot of that comes down to the loss of the chord progression. Just oscillating between these two chords now. All right. Yeah, that was very interesting. I vaguely remember maybe listening to this, I don't know, a long time ago, man. Definitely would have been back in high school, college. Like, it didn't click with me based on the title, but once we got into the song, and I was like, oh, we got variations on my favorite things from Sound of Music. It's like, okay, yeah, this is familiar. There's a lot of details in here that I don't remember. Maybe even I was just too young to pick up on too. But I do believe I've heard this sometime in my life. It's familiar enough in that regard, at least the base concept of it. So what is that bass concept? Like I said, we take the main melody, the memorable part that everybody pretty much knows of from My Favorite Things, from the musical Sound of Music, and we're just playing around with it. How can we switch things up rhythmically? How can we alter the melody of it? How can we change some notes to kind of alter the flow and emotional feeling of it? How can we alter the harmonic component, the chord progression? And we kick it off with Coltrane on his saxophone, really leaning into this. We get the core melody. He kind of introduces it with an interesting bit of staccato. He starts off with like ba 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 da ba, just like these very short notes, and then he kind of moves into something a bit more legato, ba da da, and it's just like it's this fun playfulness right from the word go. The song starts, and we don't even get the original. As far as I'm concerned, this is just one of those songs that you don't need to tee up before you start playing with. And maybe that was even more relevant at the time. I don't. 61 possibly is when this album came out. I say possibly because Spotify's not always perfect with this kind of stuff. But still, I think even then, this track would have been well cemented into pop culture's memory. It's just one of those songs that you don't need to introduce before. Well, I guess not songs, melodies that you don't need to introduce before you start putting variations on it. And we kick it off with this fun variation already, and it sets the mood for everything. I think even if you don't catch on to what's going on here, as far as the title of the track or anything like that, you're still going to kind of have the little, oh, this melody feels familiar. And then you're going to hear it a second and third and fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh time, all different. And you're going to start to pick up on the idea, oh, we got variations on a theme. That's what this song is. The interesting thing, I think, is that it's a variation on a popular theme from outside of the jazz world, from outside of Coltrane's original works. Um, and they're jazzing it up, jazzing it up, but also playing around with it and doing these variations. And I just find that to be it's just a really strong concept. You can't do that with just any song. It has to be something that has really broken into pop culture the way that My Favorite Things has. And maybe I'm giving it too much credit. Maybe there's quite a few of you who are watching this thinking, I've never heard this melody in my life. Maybe I'm overstating how well known this song is. I don't know anybody personally, which, that's not a big enough statistical number to extrapolate to the entire Western world, maybe even just the entire North American world, or even just the USA world. Um, but I don't know anybody who wouldn't recognize this theme. It's so much a part of, like I said, pop culture. Not even just like music people, but like all Sound of Music was massive. It was just a huge film, a huge musical in general. Um, I don't know. Anyways, let's keep pushing forward with this discussion here. So we have our A section. We have some chords vamping underneath. We got a very interesting bass line that seems to be emphasizing beats 1 and 4 with a little bit of a pickup note into 4. We are in 6/8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so it kind of groups these pulses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. So we have the emphasis on the 1 and the 4. That's what the bass is laying down. The drums, this entire song, the drums are just sitting in the pocket. A couple of nice flourishes and accents, particularly as I pointed out towards the end, we were getting some really nice ghost notes on the snare. There's some nice cymbal work in here to kind of spice things up, but for the most part, the drummer blends into the background, hides in the shadows, and just keeps that pulse consistent for the entirety of the song. They don't really get any big drum fills. They don't get any solo moments. they're the backbone to the song. Same with the bass. The two of them are working together to ensure that this song has a solid foundation from start to finish. The bass does change up a little bit, moving away from this 1 and 4 idea to playing a note on every beat, kind of going for a walking bass line idea. But we don't have bass solos in here. The bass doesn't really do much flourish. It's also a very functional instrument in this song. The focus then is on the sax and the piano. And like I said, at the beginning we have the A section. The piano is just kind of vamping some chords underneath, and we get the chord progression from the main melody from the sax. We get a couple variations of it, and then they pass the baton over to the pianist, and we get the piano solo here. What I love about this piano solo is that it's exploratory in unique ways. In fact, one of the first ways that the piano begins to take this core melody and explore it is through the lens of minimalism. Now, when I talk about minimalism in painting or sculpture or anything like that, it's usually a form of simplicity. It's about what is not worked on more so than what is added. But in the realm of music, minimalistic movements in music tends to be a hyper focus on a specific idea. It can sound very maximalist. It can still be layers upon layers upon layers, but the idea of minimalism would be, what if we built an entire song focusing on these 2 beats of music or something like that, and we keep drilling down into what these 2 beats are. We stretch time out so far that these 2 beats become an entire 5-minute work or something like that. There is still minimalistic music in general where it's just 1 or 2 instruments doing simple things. That sort of translation from the art world into the music world still exists, but when we talk about minimalism as a musical compositional approach, to me it's always felt kind of backwards because it can be very maximal, but it's a focusing down of attention is what it tends to mean. And I feel like we get some of that here. I mentioned that there's a part where the piano just kind of bounces back and forth between 2 notes. It took me a second to catch on what was going on here. We bounce between these 2 notes for a while, and then we bounce between these 2 notes for a while, and then these 2 notes, and it started to dawn on me, these are the first 6 notes of the melody. We're just stretching them out. What if instead of just being these 2 notes, what if we explored what those 2 notes are? What if we dug down into that? What if we explored rhythmic ideas between these 2? What if we put interesting harmonic properties underneath them and kind of changed the feeling of what these 2 notes can represent based on the chords that are existing underneath them? And after we've explored these 2 notes, we will move to the next 2 notes. This is a very, by the textbook, minimalistic exploration in music. And I thought it was fascinating to hear the piano go this route rather than stick to, more recognizable forms of variation. We're really, like I said, stretching it out, taking a microscope to each moment of this melody and exploring it. We don't do this for the entirety of the melody, but I do think it's interesting that we saw, I think it was the first 6 or 8 notes through this lens before the piano begins to play the lick, the melody, in a more immediately noticeable form, and then playing around with the harmony under it. This is when I started to catch on to some of the spicy ideas the pianist was exploring here. As we take the melody, we don't really change the notes too much, but again, we're changing the chords underneath. We're exploring what kind of atmospheres we can craft while still retaining this core lick. Without altering that too much, what kind of emotions can we explore that don't feel like they clash too much? Obviously, if we pick a key that doesn't have any of the notes that the melody is in, it's just going to sound like dissonant stuff. But no, we're sticking with sounds that are generally consonant together. And I thought this was rather interesting too, because it seemed to be that the chordal progression began to infect the melody itself, where the first time through, yeah, the chords are different, but by the second, third, fourth time through, some of the notes of the melody are being altered to better fit the chord progression. And so we're seeing this like slight alteration of the melody over time, and almost in a sense changing the key of that melody and shifting little notes every repetition in order to, modify it from the key that we start in to the key that they decided to end in. It's very interesting to see so much harmonic work being applied to this, because to me that's just not something that I hear too often in the element of theme variation, which tends to be more melodically driven. Yeah, I mean, you might change up the implied chords by changing what notes are grouped together in this melody, but you don't actually ever change the chord progression itself. It's one of those areas where I think the piano being a polyphonic instrument, that being that it can play multiple pitches at the same time, it gives the player a bit of freedom and exploration into this realm. Because you can play chords and melody at the same time, you can modify both of those simultaneously. And with the bass being the only other instrument that's providing any sort of harmonic information, it's really easy to know what the bass is doing, anticipate the type of notes the bass is going to be playing, and to dance around that and include it in your exploration. It's not like you're trying to alter the harmonic, the chord progression of a massive 80-piece orchestra, where any note outside of the key is really going to start clashing hard. There's barely any other information here to have to worry about. It's really easy to keep track of what the bass is doing and find ways to incorporate that in your own exploration while allowing the song to feel like it's continuing on in a positive way. Now, after this, we return back to the A section. Coltrane takes a couple more variations on the theme. I think some of it began to feel very samey. I don't know if he was running out of ideas or if he wanted all of the A sections to be the same or even similar. I noticed this when we came back to the A section at the end of the track, that again the melody was different than the original, but seemed very close to some of the other ways he's played it in the previous A sections. But after this A section, which feels a hair bit shorter than the first time through, now we have Coltrane's sax solo. And this I don't know, man. We're going to start off with the positive, though. One thing that Coltrane plays around with that I don't think the pianist did, and I kind of wish... Yeah, I'm going to have to look this up in a second. I don't have credits on this album for anyone other than Coltrane. So, I got to get some names on the performers in this quartet here. But something that Coltrane does when playing around with this melody is rhythmic shifting. We don't really hear too much of that from the piano. The piano hyper-focuses on melody and harmony. There are some rhythmic alterations, but I think most of that's just to kind of continue to give it that jazzy feel, kind of moving away from the stiffness of the stage musical composition, and finding something a bit looser. But Coltrane takes things in wild directions, constantly delaying very key notes in this melody. Instead of landing strongly on a downbeat, he'll actually omit that downbeat and come in on the offbeat after it to kind of give it a bit of a delayed punch. He does that quite a bit, but even pushing it sometimes an extra beat or even a beat and a half rather than just a half beat to really play around with spacing and rhythmic ideas. There's also the speeding up and slowing down of core ideas, like the main lick, the final idea, da 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 da. We have that longing when we reach the very top, da 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 da. We hold that note out after a bunch of rigid rhythmic movements. Nah, Coltrane plays way around with that. He starts, da 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 da, and it's like the rhythm is totally wild compared to the original. The notes are all the same, but he's played around with the rhythm. It's not just about delaying, it's about the push and pull, it's about the ebb and flow, it's about what notes do we speed up, what notes do we slow down, when should we slow down. And we hear a lot of this. Most of the times that he reaches a return to the memorable lick, a recognizable form of it, there's always some sort of rhythmic playfulness with it. And I find that to be an interesting juxtaposition to how the piano decides to alter the melody. But Coltrane also goes way outside of the box. There are a couple of very spicy runs that we get during a couple of the A sections where we'll have a da 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 da, just like a little up and down movement, and go do and just really expand that out and put, where maybe it was eighth notes, just cramming a bunch of 16th notes in there now and going above the original point, but coming down and landing where you expect it to land. Little playful elements like that. We hear a ton of that in here. The dude can absolutely go off at times and just completely, to use a guitar term, shred on the saxophone. And the chops, the musicianship of it all, the precision, playing at the speed while improvising, figuring out exactly what you need to do, where you're going, how you need to get there in a split second, and then having all that transfer to your fingers and your embouchure. Like, yeah, this is just amazing. But it's also frequently in these moments that I lose the thread of the variation. And it makes me wonder if either A, I'm just missing it, which is not totally uncommon. We've listened to some classical music that's entirely based around theme, and I'll pick up on some of it and I'll miss out on other parts of it. And it's quite possible that a lot of these movements in Coltrane solo are still based around my favorite things. I'm missing the thread of it. Maybe he's playing faster while also expanding the range of movement and also in a different key. And all three of those things make it sound very divorced from the original in a way that I can't recognize it anymore, but it still is based off of the original. I'd wager that that does happen more often than not, but I did find myself listening to a lot of this and enjoying the musicianship of Coltrane solo, but not really enjoying the conceptual element, not as much as the piano. I was along for the entire piano solo. Every bit of that I found was fascinating in the way that we could squash and stretch and alter and manipulate and twist and turn, but still find something recognizable in all of this variation. And I just don't get that with Coltrane's. The solo is fascinating. I love much of the narrative journey of it. Well, yeah, I'll stick with much of it. There's some parts that I found I just got a bit lost. Narratively, I didn't understand what he was doing, where he was going, why he wanted to do that specific thing. It felt like it meandered a little bit more than the piano one did. But again, it is impressive to listen to on a performative side, musicianship side. And there are many passages in here that I quite enjoyed. I just don't see how they connect to the concept of variations on my favorite things. And part of me wonders if this is by design. Coltrane gets to already do a lot of variations on that core lick in the A section. He's already done 4, 6, I think, takes on this lick. When it comes to his solo, what more can he really do? It's time to spice things up. And I think that's what he does. And I would love to, I don't know, maybe see some sheet music on this. Maybe somebody else has done a music video, not a music video, a video essay about this and has explained how Coltrane's solo here is still based off of the original melody. Regardless, I just don't have as much to say about Coltrane's solo as I did the piano solo. Like I said, it's technically impressive. There's some cool things going on there. There's some passages I really liked, but it was all in isolation. It felt like a solo section that could have been part of any song, more so than the piano section, the piano solo, which definitely feels like it is part of this track. It doesn't really fit anywhere else because it's part of this concept of variations on a theme. And I'll be honest, like I said, I got a bit lost with Coltrane's, and I was, unlike the piano solo, there was parts in Coltrane's where I was like, okay, how much longer do we have in this track? You know, how much longer till we're going to come back to the A section? Coltrane, are you going to take this somewhere? Is all of this leading into something? And I kind of dislike that because I like Coltrane as an artist. I do. Dude's written some fantastic, catchy melodies. His solo writing is fantastic. Here, just for whatever reason, it didn't grab me. And, I think maybe that's also just because the piano did such a fascinating job that I found also recognizable. It just sets the bar really high, and I already expect a lot of Coltrane. He's one of the greats. Um, that it just, I don't know. It's probably somewhere in the realm of I don't get it, and I'd really love for someone to help me get it. These are my thoughts on John Coltrane's My Favorite Things. What are yours? Do you agree with anything I said? Do you want to expand on anything I talked about? Do you disagree with anything I said? Do you have your own interpretation of things? Please put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comment section of this video. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.